backed by America, the biggest unhealth care network the world has ever seen. They've got all the ammo on the planet.
Well. How the turntables...
Now, Jay Vanderpool, being the smart guy that he is, he knows this, and he takes advantage of it. He has the guerrillas just start mag dumping everybody. He tells them, you guys have more ammo than them, abuse it. He even goes as far as to have the guerrillas start using an old school infantry tactic called marching fire, which is basically get a bunch of your guys, have them stand in a line and start walking towards the enemy with their rifles on their hip, and every time their right foot hits the ground, they fire. Now, this is like a World War I tactic, the theory being that you're both advancing and laying your own suppressing fire at the same time, obviously as you were marching towards an entrenched enemy with machine guns. So the tactic never really worked that great. But in World War II, in this application, when the enemy's just out on an open road and they don't have enough ammunition to lay suppressing fire back, it worked out great. In addition to that, there was also a huge psychological factor because you got to remember, Jay Vanderpool's like coordinating the guerrillas. I keep referring to him as the leader, but he's not actually in charge. But real guerrilla leaders could tell Jay Vanderpool to get fucked at any point in time, and he would have no other choice but to do so. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm trying to get the message across to you that these Filipino guerrilla fighters don't really give a shit about the Geneva Convention. They've never even heard of it. Believe me, you would much rather come toe-to-toe with the American military at this point in time because these Filipino guerrillas were not taking prisoners and they were not messing around. They are experts in jungle warfare, and they do not like the Japanese. The Japanese have been extremely cruel to the Filipino people for the last 3 years of the occupation, and they are out to get straight-up revenge. Like, if you got shot and injured going up against the Filipino guerrillas, you weren't injured for very long, because as soon as you hit the ground, the bolo knives are coming out, and these guys are looking at you like my wife looks at Amazon packages, okay? And every single time I bring something like this up, I get this in the comment section. Buh! That's a war crime. Buh! To which I mean, yeah, sure, I guess, but I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Because you say it with this conviction like you think RoboCop is going to descend from the heavens and enforce justice. Because I hate to break it to you in your fragile worldview, but guess how many Filipino guerrillas got convicted of war crimes after World War II? Absolutely fucking zero. Okay, now look, I'm not saying that's right, I'm just saying that it happened. And to be honest with you, I'm not that upset about it. I mean, we've all seen those situations, right? It's not appropriate to punch somebody in the face, but also, if you're at the bar with your wife and some dude walks up, smacks your wife on the ass and says, hey sweetheart, how would you like to go home with a real man? And you turn around and punch that motherfucker in the face, fucking he kind of deserved it. And if you don't like that, that's fine. We can agree to disagree. But guess what? The good news in all of this is it's easily avoidable. All you have to do is not invade the Philippines and then go out of your way to be evil and cruel to all the locals for no fucking reason. And this probably won't happen to you, okay? Simplest concept in the world. I know a lot of people struggle with it. I'm gonna say it real slow. Don't fuck around and you won't find out, okay?
I hope that this lesson is helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Moral of the story, the Filipino guerrillas are out in the jungle being complete gangsters going up against the Japanese. Now, after a while, it gets to the point where Vanderpool's contact is like, yo, you need to chill. You're expending so much ammo that the general whose AO that you're inside of is going to get mad that you're taking up some of his ammo, and you just need to slow it down because you're burning up too much. To which his guy's like, I don't know, it's some hard ass by the name of General Swing who's in charge of the 11th Airborne Division. To which Vanderpool is like, cool, you send General Swing down here. He can see my results speak for themselves, and we'll see what he has to say. So it's a date. The next morning, General Swing is going to have his driver bring him out to where Vanderpool is, and they're going to have a little conversation about how much ammunition he's burning.
Why does this motherfucker want me so bad?
That night, the guerrillas set up guarding a particular road, and as it would happen, right at dusk, an entire Japanese battalion comes marching down this road, advancing towards the American lines. The guerrillas launch an ambush and wipe out the entire battalion, 1,000 men. So the next morning, General Swing comes rolling down the very same road with his driver and his aide in his car and an armed escort, and he gets about halfway there and he starts noticing there's an awful lot of opened Amazon packages, I mean dead guys, on the side of the road. And the closer he gets to where Vanderpool's supposed to be, the more and more of them there are. And after a little bit, General Swing just tells his driver, all right, turn this shit around. He leans over to his aide and says, and I quote, you give Vanderpool all the goddamn ammunition he wants. So this continues for about a month as the American forces fight their way through Luzon to Manila. So Battle of Manila kicks off February 3rd, 1945, and the first order of business is to liberate Santo Tomas internment camp. And that also happens on February.
Oh, he died.
And what they find at Santo Tomas is absolutely horrific. The conditions of the camp have done nothing but gone down since 1943, and the conditions that they are living in 1945 are very similar to what I've already highlighted when I talked about Los Baños previously. Because of this, General MacArthur himself decides that he needs to see this with his own eyes, so he goes and visits Santo Tomas and immediately decides that his next order of business is to liberate the Los Baños internment camp immediately, and he gives that order directly to General Swing in the 11th Airborne Division. situation.
Huh?
Okay, I need you to understand that's a really big deal. General MacArthur is like top dog in the military. It's President MacArthur, everybody else. MacArthur doesn't tell individual divisions or units what to do. He doesn't give those kinds of orders. He tells entire military branches what to do, and those orders get disseminated down through the ranks amongst the different generals and goes through like a whole chain of command thing. He has just skipped several rungs of the command structure to give this order directly to General Swing, which speaks volumes as to what MacArthur thinks of the 11th Airborne, because he thinks that they are the exact people for the job, and he doesn't want the chain of command to fuck that up. So while the 11th Airborne Division is actively fighting in Manila, they are also beginning to make preparations to somehow rescue an internment camp that is 40 miles away. So right out of the gate, Vanderpool sends a bunch of guerrillas over to Los Baños. They're going to be living in the jungle 24/7, keeping an eye and keeping tabs on the internment camp and reporting back any intel they have. In addition to that, the guerrillas also have standing orders to make an emergency attack and try to save as many internees as possible if they need to. The reason for that is because there's a pretty big and pretty legitimate concern that if the Japanese are going to abandon that internment camp, that they would try to execute all the prisoners first. And in the unfortunate event of that happening, the guerrillas have the orders to attack and try to save as many people as possible. Now, with the planning of this mission, bear in mind that the 11th Airborne is still fighting actively in the Battle of Manila, and while that's going on, they're also trying to plan this mission, and this mission is seemingly impossible. Now, the planning of this mission is done by a young officer in the 11th Airborne known as Henry Mueller, and his plan is absolutely genius. Okay, so here's the initial problem. Los Baños is 40 miles behind enemy lines, and there is an entire infantry division between the Americans and this internment camp, approximately 10,000 Japanese soldiers known as the Tiger Division. So if the Americans launch a major offensive and try to punch through and destroy that division, they're going to radio back to Los Baños, and they're worried that that means that they're going to execute all the prisoners. So that's not really an option, meaning the only thing they can do is do an airborne operation where they jump in right on top of the internment camp. So Mueller starts getting intel back from the guerrillas, and they have this hand-drawn map of the camp and the surrounding area, and there is this big-ass field about 1,000 yards away from the Los Baños internment camp, and it is big enough for them to be able to land an entire company of paratroopers there. But we still have the issue of the C-47s have to fly overhead. The company has to jump out of the planes, float down, land, get their shit together, and run as fast as they can 1,000 yards, get into the internment camp, and stop the guards. So they figure that at best that's going to be about 15 minutes from the moment the paratroopers jump out of the plane to the moment that they're able to land, ditch their parachutes, grab their guns, and full assholes and elbows sprint all the way to the internment camp. That is still too long. That's 15 minutes where the Japanese have the opportunity to shoot as many people as possible. Easy solution. They're going to send in the 11th Airborne Division's recon platoon, which is like 11th Airborne Division is already above average. The recon platoon is their best guys on top of it. They're going to send in their recon platoon. They're going to link up with 800 guerrilla fighters, and they are going to be sitting right outside of Los Baños. And the second the C-47s fly overhead, they're going to launch an attack, and they're going to fight the guards in the internment camp, meaning that the guards are going to have to take up all their time fighting them as opposed to executing prisoners, and give the airborne guys enough time to get there to reinforce them, and they can overrun the camp. So this mission is already crazy. There's a lot of moving parts, but Mueller just has to assume that everything goes according to plan, because from there, it gets even harder. So when we assume that this is all went according to plan, this means that the guards have all been taken care of, and there's now approximately like 1,100-ish soldiers there between the guerrillas and the American forces, and there's approximately 2,100 internees that are in their final stages of starving to death, and they now have to transport that 2,100 people 40 miles away, and they don't have any vehicles. So that in itself is a huge logistical issue, but then you have to also add on to the fact that there is 10,000 Japanese Tiger Division soldiers blocking the route to get back to where you need to go. So at this point, Henry Mueller is like, you know what, we're just going to do some gangster shit. We're going to drive our tanks through the biggest lake in the Philippines to get there. So in addition to the guerrillas and the recon platoon waiting in the bushes for their moment to attack, the paratroopers falling from the sky, there is also going to be an entire battalion of amphibious tractors, Amtraks, floating tanks that are going to drive across Laguna de Bay, the biggest lake in the Philippines, and then drive 2 miles further inland to hit up Los Baños, and then they are going to be the ones that smash through the gate, and they are going to pick up all the internees and drive them back across the lake into friendly territory. It's genius. The only problem at this point is that they don't have enough Amtraks to be able to load up everybody at the internment camp. So when the Amtraks do show up in Los Banos, they're going to load up all the kids, all the women, and the men that are the sickest and unable to walk the 2 miles to Laguna de Bay. Then the Amtraks are going to take off, drive/sail all the way back across the biggest lake of the Philippines, drop people off, turn around, head back across it again to go pick up everybody else. And that's the problem, because while they're waiting with their backs to a giant body of water, that infantry division, the Tiger division of 10,000 angry Japanese soldiers, are going to have time to make it back to the internment camp, track them down, and presumably slaughter everybody, because they're not going to stand a chance. It would be 10 to 1, and these guys are going to be showing up with tanks, mortars, and artillery. So in order to address that, they're going to build up a massive American force right on the front line, directly in front of this Japanese Tiger division, effectively forcing them to have a Mexican standoff with the American division. And this is going to put the Japanese leadership in the position of like, I know that there's a prison raid going on directly behind me, but if I turn around to address it, this entire American army is going to kick my ass. So they're effectively just going to have to sit there in this staring contest and let this raid go on behind them, even though they know it's happening. It's genius. Mueller is effectively playing 4D chess. So Henry Mueller takes his plane to General Swing, lays it all out, and General Swing is like, okay, let's do it. It should
do not G-lock, you
motherfucker. We're still fighting the Battle of Manila, and we've taken so many casualties because
no.
we keep fighting down through Luzon, and now the Battle of Manila, we just don't have the guys to spare right now, but we're going to do it as soon as we can. So they're forced to kick the can down the road for like 2 weeks, and during this 2 weeks, somebody from Los Banos escapes the prison camp and makes their way over to the 11th Airborne's area of operation, and they get picked up, and Mueller hears about it. So Mueller wants to talk to this guy. He wants to know everything about the camp. Maybe he's missing something. Maybe there's something he could do to make his plan better, make it more effective, save more people. So Mueller brings this guy into his office and they start talking, and this guy is he's brilliant. He's memorized everything. He was previously an engineer, and this dude went as far as pacing off different buildings. He actually had measurements of how far it is from the gate to this building, from this building to that building. He knew where every machine gun emplacement was. He was able to draw out a very accurate map, every guard tower, everything. So that alone was a huge help. But in addition to that, Mueller wanted to know the schedule. He wanted to know the daily life of everybody living in Los Banos. So he has him walk him through an entire day. Like, when you wake up, tell me everything that happens. What's the patterns? What are the guards up to? What's the deal? At this point, the gentleman informs Mueller that every single day it begins with most of the guards, like 99% of them, all but like 20 dudes that they leave at the guard towers, proceed to go lock all their guns in their barracks, and then they go out in the field next to the internment camp in their underwear and sandals and do calisthenics. They're out there doing stretches and push-ups and shit to stay in good fighting shape. To which Henry Mueller's like, fucking excuse me? You mean to tell me that if I time this mission right, I literally get to catch these guys outside of the internment camp in sandals and their underwear while they're tired and sweaty? I gotta go. He goes straight to General Swing's office and he's like, hey, we got to move up the timeline for this mission. The original schedule was that the paratroopers were going to be jumping out of the C-47s at 8 o'clock in the morning, and Henry is like, we got to bump that back. They got to jump out at 7 in the morning, right in the middle of these guys doing push-ups in their underwear. We're literally going to catch the enemy with their pants down. Now, the reason he had to go all the way to General Swing to get this approved was because before that, the earliest they could be there was 8 o'clock in the morning. The reason for that was because they wanted the C-47s to have the light of dawn to be able to take off, just because it's easier getting out of the planes in the air when everybody can see and it's not dark out. But everybody pretty much agreed, this is worth it, we're going to do it anyways. So that's the plan. The plan is set in stone. We just have to wait until we have the manpower to actually pull it off. And then several things happen. The first one being that a local farmer and fisherman is sailing his boat around Laguna de Bay, and he ends up seeing the Los Banos prison camp or prisoners from that somehow, and he reports back to the Americans how sickly and how poorly they are being treated. So that's number one. The secondary thing that happens is Vanderpool's guerrillas report back that the Japanese are digging a massive hole in the ground, a humongous trench, and at the top of it are machine gun emplacements, and everybody assumes the worst, that they are digging a mass grave. So that's it. Time to shit or get off the pot. We're doing this, and we're doing it right now. Get that big military force built up right in front of the Tiger Division so they can start their Mexican standoff. Get the recon platoon out in the jungle with the guerrillas and spool up the C-47s. And for the love of God, somebody turn on Fortunate Son while we do it. I don't care if it doesn't come out till 1969 and it's February 23rd, 1945. Just make it happen. Early morning February 23rd, 1945, all of the 11th Airborne Division guys start loading on to the C-47s. Now, originally they had just slotted one company to go in and make this jump, but a lot more than just one company worth of guys ends up showing up. Now, I can't prove this with any official military document, they weren't on the manifest, but it was very much one of those situations where everybody in the 11th Airborne Division wanted to be on this mission, okay? They'd already been through hell together, they fought through Leyte, they fought through Luzon, they're in the Battle of Manila, and they had freed Santo Tomas, and all of them had seen the horrors that were happening inside of that POW camp, and absolutely everybody wanted to help. So more guys showed up, whether they were supposed to or not, and they jumped as well. So they load up into the C-47s, they take off. Problem, one of the C-47's landing gear won't retract back up into the plane. Apparently, in the darkness of night, one of the maintainers on the ground forgot to pull the locking pin out of the landing gear, and now they can't pull the landing gear up, meaning they can't get up to speed, they're gonna miss the hit time. Okay, right out of the gate, that's a big fucking problem. I mean, it's only one of the planes, so it's got approximately like 28 paratroopers in it, but in a mission this small, 28 guys can be a make or break amount of dudes. And we don't have time to turn around, pull the pin out, and get that plane back up into the air. We can't have all of the C-47s slow down because then none of them will make their hit time, and they all have to be there when they're supposed to be there because those Amtraks are showing up on time, the recon platoon and the guerrillas are showing up on time, and most importantly, we gotta catch the enemy literally with their pants down in a field doing push-ups. At this point, the pilots are like, fuck it, I'm just gonna floor it the entire way there with the landing gear down. I'll just beat the atmosphere into submission for the next 40 miles, to which the radio tower is like, you're gonna blow an engine if you do that, and the pilots respond with, well, let's hope I blow it on the way back. And I think we can all agree that's gangster as fuck. Well, that's going on. The recon platoon and the scouts are going and they're getting into position, and one of the recon guys, a guy by the name of Terry Santos, as he's coming up to the camp, approaches this guard hut that's like kind of right out in the middle of nowhere. It's like an early warning system, and inside of it's just one man sleeping on his gun, and he's got a field gun in his other hand. Terry pulls out his knife. He's gonna kill this guy. But then he stops. He realizes that this guy's out there as an early warning system. He's probably got to check in every hour, every half hour, every 15 minutes. He has no idea. And if this guy misses a check-in, it's going to put the entire camp on alert. So he resheathes his knife and just sneaks past him. Okay, side note, luckiest Japanese soldier in the entire story, and he's being a complete shitbag. So, all I'm saying, sometimes being a shitbag could save your life. I mean, what's the shitbag's creed? Never stand when you could sit, never sit when you could lay down, and never be awake when you could be asleep. Yeah, this just saved this guy's life. Anyways, the scouts and the guerrillas, they all go out, they get in position. Thanks to the new drawn map from the previous escapee, they know where every single guard tower and guard hut is. And there are scouts literally sitting outside of them on the other side of the wall, next to the windows with grenades, waiting to hear the C-47s coming up, and they're just gonna toss grenades into all the guard checkpoints and take out all the guards at once immediately. So they're in position and they're waiting, and it feels like forever, but it's probably only like 5 or 10 minutes, and they're waiting, and then they start to hear the faint drone of the C-47s off in the distance, and they keep waiting until it gets louder and louder, and then as soon as the Japanese guys out working in the field turn to start looking up towards the sky, they attack. Every guard hut on the ground gets a grenade through the window. Every guard tower gets raked with machine gun fire. Terry Santos runs in, and the barracks that has all the guns inside of it, and he throws white phosphorus grenades inside, lighting the entire building on fire so that they can't even retrieve their guns if they wanted to. Another scout runs up to the commandant's office where the man in charge is supposed to be, and the only Japanese man in there runs and jumps out the window of the second-story building, and allegedly the scout shoots him out of midair with his Colt 45.
Nice shooting, Tex.
Some of the guards try to fight, the paratroopers show up, and all in all, this entire affair is quick, violent, and over, with somewhere between 70 and 80 of the Japanese guards being killed in action, and the remainder of them fled off into the wood line in their underwear and sandals. So it's going perfect. Everything is going 100% according to plan. Next thing you know, the Amtraks drive right through the front gate. They roll up. Their guys get out. They start trying to help load people into the Amtraks so they can all get out of there. And here's where things go off the rails. You see, what they didn't anticipate in this plan was a lack of cooperation from all the attorneys. And to be fair, they're not trying to be difficult. They don't want to not cooperate, but they don't realize the gravity of the situation. In their mind, you gotta remember, they're starving, they're hungry, they've lived here for the past 3 years, this is their home. They think that the Americans have come to save them, and they are now behind friendly lines. They don't realize that they're 40 miles deep behind enemy lines, and that there's an army of 10,000 Japanese soldiers coming to potentially kill them at any moment. And the army guys don't exactly have time to explain that to 2,100 people, so they're kind of sitting over there like, guys, I need you to get on the Amtraks right now, and they're like running back to the barracks like, oh, let me go pack my bags real quick. No, we don't have time. for
There's
any of that shit.
another bot
It's chaos. It's a complete shit show. There's 2,100 starving people running around trying to pack their bags. There's people coming out of the barracks with furniture and mattresses and shit. The paratroopers are 100% just channeling that dad energy of like trying to get mom and the kids out of the movie theater, into the car, sit down, buckle up, shut up, so I can get us out of this parking lot to beat all the traffic out of here. They're channeling that energy. And finally, they're like, no, we're not bringing you into this shit. The clothes on your back and you get on the Amtrak. We have to leave right now. And they're like, fuck it. They take white phosphorus grenades and they go and they light all the buildings on fire so that people have to get out of them because they need all of these people to fucking leave now. And amidst all the chaos, there's this famous interaction where this young woman in her 20s that's been in this internment camp the entire time comes up to one of the biggest, best-looking paratroopers there and is like, are you a Marine? And he's like, no, I'm a paratrooper. Like, trying to be Mr. Big Badass, right? And she's like, oh. All the time I've spent here in this internment camp, I've always dreamed about being rescued by a Marine. Which is just the ultimate cherry on top of this shit Sunday. Like, hey, sorry things aren't going that great at this moment. Also, don't know if it helps. Just wanted you to know that I would rather bang a Marine. In addition to that, there was a bunch of Catholic priests and nuns that had dropped to their knees praying, thanking God for literally sending angels to come and save them. At which point, the angels are like, bro, do that on the Amtrak. Get up and then go take a knee in the tank so we can get this shit going, because I'm trying to actually finish saving you guys. I'm not done yet. And this is my favorite part of the story, right? Because Amtraks all have names painted on the side, right? They're like tanks. They're like, the crew gives their tank a funny name or a cool name or a badass name. Like Gene Lafayette Poole called his M4 Sherman tank In the Mood. Well, this particular Amtrak that they loaded up all of the Catholic priests and nuns onto, on the other side of it, its name was, and I quote, the Impatient Virgin, which is fucking hilarious. Anyways, all the Amtraks get loaded up to maximum capacity and they take off. So now we've got all the paratroopers and somewhere between 500 and 600 of the healthiest looking internees available, and they're gonna have to walk 2 miles over to the lake. Okay, now cut back to the Amtraks. They're driving to the lake and they start taking fire from the tree line. You can see the muzzle flashes off in the distance. So one of the American soldiers in one of the Amtraks is trying to get up to the 50 cal to return fire, but there's so many internees in there and nobody's listening. They're all cheering and talking and nobody can hear him. He's telling people to move, but they're not listening. So he finally just literally gets on top and crawls over people to get onto this machine gun to start returning fire.
What the fuck happened to the guy?
Just dumping ammunition everywhere in that general direction, literally cutting down the trees
that the guy?
People were firing from. And finally, when he quits seeing muzzle flashes, he stops firing.
I think if I would have pressed
and
him,
as the gun falls silent and the ringing in his ears finally goes away after a couple seconds, he hears a baby crying. And he looks down, and there's an internee woman that was obviously starving to death, and she was holding a 3-day-old baby named Lois. And the baby was crying because one of the hot brass casings from the 50 caliber machine gun had fallen down and burnt this little 3-day-old baby's face. And this American soldier's name was Dwight Clark, felt like the biggest piece of shit on the planet because he had just burnt this little baby's face with a brass casing. But as sad as that is, everything works out as best as it possibly could, because they get all of the internees across the lake, drop them off, turn back around, go pick up everybody else and bring them back safely. They got every single internee in Los Banos out of that camp. Okay, worth mentioning, prior to this mission, the chain of command always sets parameters as to what's going to deem this mission a success. And this mission being successful was if they were going to be able to liberate 1/3 of the internees, and they got all of them. Unfortunately, not everybody would get a happily ever after. Among the Japanese soldiers that escaped in the first attack was Sadaki Konishi. He fled, made his way back to the Tiger Division, at which point, later on in the coming days, he would convince the leadership of the Tiger Division to go back to the internment camp. And
Did he almost say Tiger King there?
That was
I think he almost
adjacent
did.
to it, and for whatever reason, he decided that that village should pay the price for his embarrassment, because apparently they would have had something to do with it, surely, even though they really didn't. More or less, the entire village was burnt to the ground and they killed everyone for the crime of simply existing near the site of their embarrassment, even though they had nothing to do with it. About a week later, American forces would win the Battle of Manila, and they would continue to advance southward towards Los Banos, where they had previously been, and the 11th Airborne and the rest of the Allied forces would come face to face and see what the Japanese had done to that village because of their success during Los Banos War. For this, Sadaki Konishi was captured, tried, and sentenced to death by hanging in 1949, which, unpopular opinion, seems like far too quick of a death for somebody that is that evil, but I don't know, maybe I'm a bad person. But the good that came out of this was it
Oh, this shit
2,000
fucking rolls
internees
quick
have been
now.
tortured
Holy
and
fuck.
starved for over 3 years would finally get to return home and live happily ever after. The Sacred 11, the naval nurses that volunteered to go and help keep all of these people alive while also living under the same conditions, were all awarded the Bronze Star and are highly regarded as heroes. The 11th Airborne Division got almost no break from the combat as they continued to finish clearing out the Philippines. The raid of Los Baños is considered to be the most perfect airborne operation that has ever been executed and is deemed as a great success. Despite that, most of you have never even heard of it, and there's one simple reason for that. On the very same day as the Los Baños raid, February 23rd, 1945, a group of Marines fashioned together a couple of drainage pipes and put the American flag on it and hoisted it over a battlefield where they were victorious at Iwo Jima. And when push came to shove, the newspapers decided to air the story that had the cooler picture. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I have absolutely no idea how to end this video, so I'm just gonna end it with my favorite part. Fast forward to 1998, 43 years later, there's a woman by the name of Lois that gets a phone call, seemingly out of the blue. She answers it, says hello, and it's an elderly man on the other line by the name of Dwight Clark, and he says, "Are you baby Lois from Los Baños?" To which she replies, "Yes." And the next thing he says is, "Do you have scars on your face?" This man fought through the Pacific in World War II. He has probably both seen and had to do horrific things to survive. And out of all of that, it has tormented this man for the past 43 years, knowing that he may have hurt a sweet, innocent little baby. And after that time, 4 decades, he finally finds out that she did not have any scars on her face. And that is probably the happiest ending with the most closure that I could possibly give you. So, thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch at fatelectrician.com.
Ooh,
Whack
that
bag.
was a spicy little mountain. I almost did not survive that.
This is a really long video. I need a drink. Oh, hey, real quick, one more thing. If you guys wanted to know more about the 11th Airborne, there's a guy that actually specializes in it by the name of Jeremy Holm. He actually helped me out with this video. He's written 3 books on the subject, and he has his own YouTube channel exclusively making content about the 11th Airborne. I'm going to have that link down below if you guys were interested. Other than that, I'm going to go get that beer now. See ya.
Formerly General Manager of Trans-Pacific Trading Company, ex-Chief of Police and Fire Departments of Los Baños Internment Camp. Mr. Kingsbury, would you describe in your own words your reaction to your liberation on February the 23rd?
I went about my business, dressed, doing the regular duties in the room, when all of a sudden I heard the sound of planes very near, looked out of my cubicle, found first 3 planes came over one of the lower barracks. I noticed a white sheet drop out of one. I'd read a great deal about parachutes. I'd never seen them so near me before. All of a sudden, the 9 planes were letting these parachutes out. It just seems that the air was filled with them. At that time, shooting began. Japanese bullets were flying thick and fast. Things were pretty hot there for about a half, 3/4 of an hour. In the meantime, the boys had come in and told us that we had to evacuate. In the question of a few minutes, we were on the M tracks, where we rolled out of the camp, down to the shores of Laguna de Bay. That's the lake that was nearby, 2 kilometers away from the camp.
I imagine, Mr. Kingsbury, that you probably did the entire United States Army was dropping on your head when they started coming.
I certainly did, and I even have to pinch myself now to realize that I am really free to talk and do as I please.
You can do anything you want.
After 1145 days in the Emperor of Japan, you can't realize how life is.
No, sir, I can't. I understand, Mr. Kramer, that you were wounded by a stray Japanese bullet during the liberation.
Well, there really isn't much to say. The bullets were flying right and left. We were so excited. We didn't know what to do. So
Tell me, Mr. Kramer, what are your plans for the future?
I really don't know. There's so many things I want to do, but I can't make up my mind.
What do you want to do? United States. You mean you want to go back to the United States?
I'm nice to him. Okay?
The camera's off, man. You don't have to lie. What?
I'm nice to him, people.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Give you everything you want because you're a prince.
Everything?
No.
See?
Just like me. I love him so much. And
Kill that boy, kill that boy, kill that boy, kill that boy!
very nice to him.
Yeah!
He gets treated very idiot.
That's funny.
Next, I'd like to introduce 3 charming young ladies, 3 sisters, who help making the lonely hours not heavy. Not so sisters.
Three little sisters who lived in the
I do not trust these missiles to not kill my fucking teammate. I trust that more though.
A lot of you probably already know the name Desmond Doss, and even more of you would remember it if I reminded you that he was the conscientious objector in World War II that refused to carry a weapon into combat, despite that he saved 75 men at Hacksaw Ridge as a medic. But what almost none of you have heard of is the experimental unit that he was a part of. Today we're talking about the 77th Infantry Division, aka the Old Bastards. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you realize it or not, we've all been exposed to the concept that you should never underestimate the old guy, because sometimes he just might be a complete badass. We see it everywhere. There's memes and commonly held sayings all over the internet, like youth and exuberance is no match for old age and treachery, or beware an old man in a profession where young men die. And if that wasn't enough, in pop culture and TV, there are characters in pretty much every show and every movie that are the embodiment of this sentiment, and they are more often than not the fan favorite that everybody loves. On Nickelodeon, a kids channel, you see characters like Uncle Iroh and King Boomy. In anime, you see characters like Master Roshi. In more adult shows, you've got characters like Mike from Breaking Bad, Lloyd from Yellowstone, and Sir Barristan from Game of Thrones. Characters like this are everywhere in pop culture, and they are catered to every age group because it is never too early to learn the simple concept of be careful, because that old man just might whoop your fucking ass. And I bring all this up because it raises one simple question. If old men really are such badasses and experience is truly such a valuable asset, what would happen if you made an entire army out of old guys? Well, we don't have to wonder, because in World War II, America did just that, and the results speak for themselves, and we're going to get into it right after a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Henson's Shaving. Okay, here's the deal. Henson's is a family-owned machine shop that makes parts for the aerospace industry. There's literally parts on the Mars rover that these guys made, and one day they woke up and they're like, hey, we're just going to make the most precise safety razor on the market. And this is it. This is all they sell. It comes in aluminum or titanium. If you want to pay extra, it comes with a little stand. And then they also... I don't have a daughter, but if I did, this is who I would want her to look up to. Today we're talking about Virginia Hall, aka the Limping Lady, probably the most effective American spy of World War II, and she managed to do that with one leg. But first, a word from our sponsors. This video is brought to you by Ridge Wallet. If you've been on the internet in the last decade, you know what Ridge Wallet is. I'm not going to waste your time. Ridge hired me to tell you to buy your dad a Ridge Wallet for Christmas. If your dad's anything like mine, his wallet probably looks like a Gutenberg Bible and his back hurts, and nobody has ever pointed out to this poor guy that, hey, maybe your back hurts because every time you sit down, you've got a phone book underneath one butt cheek and you look like you're the Leaning Tower of Pisa inside of a chair. So head over to ridge.com/TFE and shop the holiday sale. You're going to save up to 30%, and when you use my link, you're also going to be automatically enrolled in a chance to win a $4,000 bundle from Ridge. Let's get back to the video. All right, Virginia Hall, born in 1906 in Baltimore. She grew up in a really wealthy family and was a complete tomboy the entire time, and her father absolutely loved it. He taught her how to hunt, and he completely endorsed her being not very ladylike all of the time. In addition to being a tomboy, she was also highly intelligent, graduated from high school with ease, and getting accepted into the top female colleges in the country. Her mother, on the other hand, had different plans, because immediately after high school, she expected Virginia to get married to a young man from another wealthy family in the area so they could combine their family businesses. So she gets engaged to this guy at 18 years old. Fast forward 1 year, she's 19 years old, and she keeps catching her fiance cheating on her, so she calls off the engagement and runs off to college despite her mother's wishes. She immediately attends the top 2 female colleges in the country, Radcliffe and Barnard, which are the equivalent of Harvard and Columbia. She studies economics and foreign languages, deciding that she wants to become an American diplomat. She wants to live in an embassy and represent the United States of America. However, this is the 1920s, and the odds of a female landing that job are slim to none, but she wants to maximize her chances, so she learns as many foreign languages as possible. She becomes fluent in German, Italian, and French, and finishes college abroad, studying in Germany, France, and Austria. While finishing college in Europe in the late 1920s, she would bear witness to the birth of fascism and the rise of the Nazi Party, and have a better understanding of how dangerous that ideology was than 99% of Americans. She would return home in 1929. A few months after that, the stock market would crash, the Great Depression would start, and her father, a wealthy business owner, would lose almost everything, and the increased stress would lead to him having a heart attack and dying. This made Virginia even more determined to accomplish her goal of becoming an American diplomat, so she got a job working for the U.S. Embassy in Poland as a secretary. She worked there for several years, and every year she would apply for a promotion to become a U.S. diplomat, and every year something went wrong. The first year, they lost her application. The second year, her application made it through because she delivered it herself, and she was a shoo-in. She could speak 4 languages, she was a college graduate, she was highly intelligent, well-spoken, so she passed the application portion of the hiring process and had to have an in-person interview, and conveniently, they accidentally told her the wrong place and the wrong time to be, so she got disqualified again. Realizing that that embassy had it out for her and was not about to let a woman become a diplomat, she transferred to a different embassy in Turkey. So now it's 1933, she's living in Turkey, she's working as a receptionist at the embassy still, and she's just waiting for that next opportunity to apply to become a diplomat. One of her hobbies at this point in time is to go out hunting with the shotgun that her father had bought for her when she was a kid. It's an irregular hobby for a woman, but Virginia's an irregular type of woman. So she goes out hunting with her friends one day, and they're hunting for snipes, which if you don't know is this little tiny bird. Apparently they're really hard to hit, and this is where the term sniper comes from. Regardless, at one point she has to hop over a fence. She forgot to turn the safety on her shotgun and accidentally blew her own foot off. Luckily her friends were there and they managed to pick her up, get her to the hospital in time to save her life. While she's in the hospital recovering, she would end up getting gangrene, which is a very, very serious type of infection, especially back then in the 1930s because antibiotics weren't going to be widely used or available for another decade. And I mean, the doctors back then are basically just grunts with scalpels, so they come over to Virginia, they're like, hey, here's the deal, you're going to die, there's one chance that we can save you. Basically, my medical opinion is your leg is pissed off and it's trying to kill you. My strategy is I'm going to kill it first, I'm going to cut it off and throw it away. So that's what they do. She gets amputated from the knee down. Later in her life, while she was recovering in the hospital, her father had come to her in a dream and told her that she had to get through this because she had important work to do. So that's what she does. She makes a full recovery, gets a wooden prosthetic, learns how to walk again, and goes right back to trying to be an American diplomat. However, you gotta remember, she's a complete tomboy, and what's the first thing a dude does when he gets a new car, a new set of wheels, a new gun? He always gives it a name, right? Right. Virginia named her wooden leg Cuthbert. So she goes back to work and continues trying to become a diplomat. However, now they have a legitimate reason to not let her become one. They don't need to lose her application. They don't need to give her the wrong dates and the wrong times anymore, because apparently there was a pre-established rule that amputees were not allowed to become diplomats. Why? I have no idea, but it turns out that Virginia has now both literally and figuratively shot herself in the foot. Virginia, being the badass that she is, though, isn't about to take no for an answer, so she begins lobbying to have the rules changed altogether. She doesn't have much success. Fast forward 1940, Germany invades France, and Virginia is like, fuck it, I'm gonna go be an ambulance driver and help out the French because I hate Nazis. And that's exactly what she does. Virginia, a 35-year-old woman that was physically unfit to be an American diplomat where she would have to sit in an office and talk to people, is now on her way to France to be an ambulance driver in an active war zone. So she's an ambulance driver all throughout the Battle of Paris, and she is one of, if not the first Americans to actually stand up and fight against the Nazis. After France falls, she has to flee, so she hops on a train, makes her way over to Spain. While she's at the train station, she meets a British intel officer, and she tells him her story. This guy is so impressed that he's like, hey, take this phone number and call my friend. He could probably help find you a job over in England if that's where you want to go. So she calls the number looking for a job, and that number puts her in contact with a man by the name of Nicholas Bottom, one of the head guys of the newly formed British SOE. SOE standing for Special Operations Executive, which is just the new spin-off of Great Britain's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, aka their equivalent of the CIA. So she talks to them and pretty much immediately wanted to be a spy. She speaks German, she speaks French, she's lived in France, she understands the culture, and most importantly of all, she's an American. And this is important because that means she can use her actual American identity and all her real documentation to give to the Germans to get into France, posing as a journalist. Virginia immediately agrees and goes into training for the next 6 months, learning everything there is to know about espionage, or at least as much as she can in that amount of time. Fast forward 6 months later, mid-1941, Virginia Hall, the spy, gets dropped off in Vichy, France. Which, if you don't know, at this point in time, France is split in two. There's occupied France, and then there's unoccupied France, also referred to as Vichy France. Now, Vichy France is technically, supposedly free, but pretty much everybody knows that it's a puppet state for the Nazis at this point. And Hall's job is to go in there, posing as a journalist for the New York Post, build a spy network, and do anything she can to to fuck with the Nazis. Okay, just so we're on the same page, this isn't like the movies where she has like instructions to go meet with some guy that's her connection and she like integrates with this already existing spy network. No, she was the first spy to go in. She had to go in and build the network from scratch. They literally took Hall, a 35-year-old woman with a wooden leg, gave her some money and some cyanide pills in case she got caught, sent her into enemy-held territory and was like, fucking figure it out. So Hall shows up in Lyon, France, and she doesn't even have anywhere to stay. All the hotel rooms are full, all the houses are rented. So many people are displaced from the war, there's nowhere for them to stay. So she ends up living with a bunch of nuns at first. And she like had a curfew, the whole 9 yards. Then after a couple weeks, she finally gets out.
Dude, I don't know what the fuck is going on with my stomach, but I gotta end stream again.
She goes straight to the U.S. Embassy and tries to get their help. And the head of the U.S. Embassy is like, absolutely not. America's neutral. We want nothing to do with it. But the second in command of the American embassy pulls her aside and he's like, yes, I'm willing to help. And this is really important because this is the only way she's going to be able to communicate with London. You see, because it's an embassy, they have a diplomatic bag. So it's going to be mail that's not being screened by the Nazis before it goes out. So if this guy's willing to slip her messages to London into the diplomatic bag, it's going to be the only way that she's going to be able to get
I'm in stream. I don't